It's after midnight and everybody's gone to bed. It's time for some midnight ops.
So this is going to show building of one leg of the upright for the 16 9 cap. So what I'm doing right now is getting my 45-degree angle set up on that little jig there. I'm going to cut it for my long piece to start with. Now I'm doing my short piece, really just cutting it in half here. Actually measured it just a little bit and actually get pretty close to cutting it in half right here. Just cleaning up the edges on these makes for better weld if you don't have any slag or residue, and just a clean surface to weld to. Just putting some tack welds in, get it situated. Now I'm testing it for square. Do a lot of this testing just to make sure it's square over and over and over. This part made me so nervous, mostly because if you mess this up, the whole thing's jacked. More testing, making sure, measuring it over and over, twisting it just a little bit, make sure it stays true. It's just tacked up right now, so I can move it by hand a little bit. Welding it up again, tacking it up, making sure it stays. Then of course, more testing. And more testing. We'll see if all this testing paid off for me. All right, so now we got to do the math figuring out these angles and for the brace. So this is the long leg, this is the short leg, and then this is the brace I want, which will help keep this at 90 degrees. So I always like doing math. This is going to be geometry, not going to be trigonometry, which is good. So this is going to be, of course, the right angle. And then because certain, right triangles have properties or special properties, we're going to go with the called the let's see, 30 degree, 60 degree, and of course 90 degrees. Oops, 90 degrees. So this one is 30 degrees, this one's 60 degrees. And then of course, if we change this from a right triangle to an equilateral triangle, now this whole thing here is 60, and this is 60, which means that all these sides are equal. Now, I know the distance I want here, which is 20.5 inches. So that means that this whole length of this is then 41 inches. So half of it, which means that my hypotenuse here is 41 inches. And then, of course, we go back to the tried and true, everybody knows it. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So we know this length here for A is 20.5 plus B squared, which is going to be that length, C squared, 41 squared. So 41 squared is 1,681. That's of course B squared. And then 20.5 squared is 420.25. Of course, I did these calculations beforehand. So subtract 420.25 from each side is 1260.75. Take the square root of both sides. So B equals 35.75 20.507. So I did a little bit of pre-calculations here to try to get these to mostly round numbers. So that means that the distance here is 20.5. The distance here is 41. And then this distance is 35.507, or roughly 35 and a half. That's pretty freaking close. So no trigonometry involved, just using the basic math, the Pythagorean theorem here. It's just some geometry. Always like math, so just wanted to show how I got those calculations out, and I just messed around with it a little bit. I knew I wanted this length here to be roughly 20 to 22, 23 inches, somewhere around there, and I knew I wanted this length here to be roughly 36, so 3 feet, because I figured this is going to be roughly around where the, like right here will be roughly where the TV gets mounted, so that the center of it is roughly the center of my chest. So I knew those rough numbers. So I just started with, basically knowing I would be doubling that. And so I wanted to do it by increments of 1/2, so 20, 20 and a half. And when I hit my second try of 20 and a half, this was pretty close here. So, 35 and a half, 0.07. So now I got to do is cut a 30 and a 60-degree angle. Since these pipes are, 3 dimensions, one of the things, I have to be careful of. So when we do this, when I'm measuring out that 41, or sorry, that 41, I have to make sure that it's from this point to this point is 41. It's not this point, because that's actually going to be much longer. It's going to be like 44. So it's these inside lengths that I'm looking at, because it's the inside triangle. So this inside triangle is 20.5. So that's the thing to look at is when you're doing this, because it's in 3 dimensions, of course, and these are all 2D calculations, that you make sure that you measure at the correct point. So on the inside of these lengths is where I'm looking. All right, so now all I got to do is to do it. So this 30-degree angle was easier to cut because I could put it on the on it and measure it out. I had forgotten one of my measurements. That is why I kept measuring. It wasn't coming out correctly. I finally remembered the length of the leg was 35 and a half inches, not 30 and a half. The old adage of measure twice, cut once really came into play here, even though I probably measured a dozen times overall. Measuring, and more measuring. So this is the 60-degree angle here. This one, my saw doesn't have a degree finder for, so I measured it, clamped it to the little angle finder there, and then ended up just holding it and cutting it by hand in the end. So it's pretty difficult. Didn't quite get it where I wanted it to be, but it was pretty close. Once again, cleaning the edges up. So I had the marks there, so measuring those out, tacking these in, making sure it stays square, because it should stay square, then the brace just helps keep it there.
Okay, so not too great there. I have a bit of a gap, and I blew through right there. But the most important thing is, zoom out here, is that it's still all square. Of course, there's a weld there. So obviously you can see these are just tacked in right now. So the next thing I'm going to do is finish weld all these so that everything stays in place. And then basically I do it all again, make it match exactly, mirror this perfectly for the other side. And then my next video will be connecting the two sides up.
Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Otherwise, see you on the next Midnight Ops.